Good Shabbos. This week's portion is Parshas Shmini, and it's also a special Shabbos called Parshas HaChodesh. It's a week where we read a special maftir from the Torah, and we read HaChodesh Hazel Lochem Rosh Chodashim, that this month should be the beginning of the months, and we understand that this is referring to the month of Nisan, and specifically the place in the Torah where this is mentioned, and we read this coming Shabbos is right after God tells Moshe that he's going to give us the last plague. Before he gives the last plague in Egypt, he introduces the idea of bringing the Karban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, which is brought, and as we know, the blood is smeared on the doorposts and saves the firstborn of the Jewish people during Makas Bacharis, when the firstborn of the Egyptians are killed. And before it does that, it starts with this verse which says that this is the first of the months. The question is, why is this important now, and why is it placed in the middle of the story of the plagues? You would think that would be something which might be stated in a more halachic section of the Torah. But I think it's important to understand that what the Torah is really doing here. And it's changing, in a sense, the calendar. Now, we usually think of the beginning of the year of Rosh Hashanah as Rosh Hashanah, the new year, which is in Tishrei, after right before Sukkot. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot, the month of Tishrei. And we call that Rosh Hashanah. Not only that, in the davening, we say Hayom Hara Salam. On Rosh Hashanah, we say today is the conception of the world. And we assume that the world was created on Rosh Hashanah. Some say not just really the world was created, the world might have been created 6 days before, but that's when Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve were created on Rosh Hashanah. But there's actually an argument in the Talmud, which is really the Rosh Hashanah. When did the year or the calendar begin? When was creation? To put it that way. And one opinion is that it happened in Tishrei, and the other is that it happened in Nisan. So really the idea that Rosh Hashanah is in Tishrei is not so clear, and actually it seems like the final opinion is that it happened in Nisan. And the truth is, when you read the Torah doesn't call the holiday of Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah. It's a Yom Teruah. It's a day where you blow the shofar. It doesn't say anything about Rosh Hashanah. So there's a little bit of a confusion about when the new year starts, and the new year seems to be connected to when the world was created. So much so that one of the commentaries in the Talmud says, well, it's both are true, that in the beginning of Tishrei, God had the idea, Baba Machshavi had the idea to create the world, but he didn't actually create it until the month of Nisan. Other commentaries explain that the month of Tishrei is associated with the midah, the character trait of God of din, of justice, and that's why, of course, we say that Rosh Hashanah is also Yom Hadin, a day where God holds court and judges us for the rest of the year. And the month of Nisan is associated with the midah, with the character trait of chesed, of kindness. And that makes a lot of sense. Pesach, of course, is the month where God gave us the redemption from Egypt, took us out of Egypt and redeemed us from slavery. Rosh Hashanah is a day which we assume God passes judgment on Kol Ba'ei Olam, all of the creatures of the world, as again we say in our tefillah, and our prayers on Rosh Hashanah. So what seems to be happening is that there's really two Rosh Hashanahs and two conceptions. And we could explain it as one represents din, justice, one represents chesed, kindness. One might be justice for the whole world and the creation of the world, or maybe say the beginning of the year, which is in Tishrei for the whole world. And now what's happening, and that's why it's specifically placed at this point in the Torah, is saying, no, for the Jewish people, the year starts in Nisan. It might be that the world was created in Tishrei, or as that commentary said, it's Baba Machshava, it was thought about, but at the end of the day, what's really important to us might not be the actual creation of the world, but the creation of the Jewish people. So there's a Jewish New Year, and there's a New Year for the rest of the nations of the world. The rest of the nations, God judges with din, with justice, according to this idea. And God is going lifnim mishras din, beyond the letter of the law, and saving us and redeeming us and doing acts of kindness, of chesed, for the Jewish people. And in a sense, again, this is the tension that I've mentioned other times, whether we see ourselves as sort of particular, as specific as the Jewish people, and we focus on that, or do we see ourselves as part of the universal mankind? And I think both are true. So we celebrate the day of Din, of justice, at the beginning of the year in Tishrei, but we also say that when does our nation start? When does our new year start? When were we created as a people? We were created as a people in Nisan. So we want to celebrate both. We have this tension between God being din and God being chesed, God being either justice or kindness. And there's that idea is represented actually in the beginning of the Chumash. Rashi says that God uses the Torah, uses the name of Elohim, when it's in the first chapters of the Torah, and then it introduces the name of Hashem, the four-letter name of God, in the second chapter. And again, commentaries understand that the name of Elohim is associated with din, with justice, and the name of Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, the four-letter name of God, is associated with chesed, with kindness. And they say, well, Baba Machshava, God had in his mind to create the world with Midas Hadin, with the attribute of justice, but he saw that the world would not be able to survive if God was always looking at the world and saying, we have to do what's right, meaning you have to be punished and severely punished if you don't live up to the standards that God has set. And God says, I can't do that. And therefore he used Midas Chesed, or they actually say Midas Rachamim, mercy, which is understood as a blending of din and chesed, because extreme kindness allows people to survive even when they'll be harmful to themselves, to society, to communities. So there's this idea that God puts both into effect. And that's how we live our lives as a Jewish people. We assume that if it was just pure din, if it was just pure justice, we wouldn't survive. We might not be worthy. We constantly rely and the midas hachesed, the attribute of kindness. And I think it's very important for us to realize that we are supposed to emulate God, and we have to take a lesson from the way God works the world, and we have to then say we also want to be like God. Mahu rachum afata rachum, just like He is merciful, so too shall you be merciful. Mahu chanun, just like He is gracious, afata chanun, so too must you be gracious. And so therefore we have to say the way God treats us, we have to create that personality trait and that character trait within ourselves, and we have to act towards others in that way. We always have to blend it with a little bit of din, with justice, but as another section in the Talmud says, when things are evenly balanced, we're always mata klape chesed. We have to lean towards kindness. We have to understand that justice must exist in the world, but when we have a choice and we have to make a decision, we always have to lean towards kindness. And if we act in that way, then God acts midah keneged midah, measure for measure, and hopefully He'll treat us in the same way. And this Pesach will be a symbol of the mercy of God on the Jewish people, and that will come to a place where Israel and the Jewish people will live in peace. Good Shabbos.